Welcome everybody to this extremely very special episode of HR Wonder Women. Ann and I were supposed to do this at WorkHuman in San Antonio, May 2020. And unfortunately, the world had other plans, apparently. That was just a small thing, but we're all in the midst of COVID-19. WorkHuman has postponed their event to 2021. So apparently we're going to be really busy in 2021, going to all sorts of events. But we thought it would be fantastic to bring these ladies together and do our panel anyway, because we have the technology. We might as well do it. And selfishly, I wanted to chat with these ladies anyway. So, Ann, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you, Wendy. I am doing great getting to see all of your faces on this screen. I think I'm getting zoomed out from my day job, but this is not that. This is so great to see everybody.
It's different when
Really,
it's
this
social.
is different.
Much better.
Yeah.
Yes, Zoom fatigue is real. It is so real. I'm not quite there yet, but yeah, the last few calls, I'm like, I'm just gonna keep my video off. Thanks.
And I was just Zoom bombed yesterday for the first time.
Oh, are you okay?
And it was horrific and pretty violating.
Yeah.
And I could
Wow.
see how there's a lot of discussion around that. That's, yeah.
It
Oh,
never
I'm so
ceases
sorry
to
to hear
amaze
that.
me the
Yeah.
fact that people have so little going on in their lives.
Right.
They need to take time to terrorize other people. Like, you must be a very miserable person.
You'd have to be.
Like,
You'd have to be. Oh my, yeah.
Crazy.
So fingers crossed that our recording doesn't end up with that. But then there's the magic of editing too, right? So, well.
Or that if it happens, even that more necessary to talk about it and shed light on it. Because what it's really doing is, quite frankly, traumatizing people of color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah,
more
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because it's loaded bombing. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to interrupt your video.
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
It's
this is not like a
very
ding-dong
pointed.
ditch at 10
No.
years old. No,
No.
this is more serious.
Oh, well, Elena, I am so sorry that happened to you. It's horrible. It's horrible that people are finding ways to mess up a good thing, which I guess that's kind of a human thing, unfortunately. But so anyway, we are here today with Sarah Morgan, Elena Valentine, and Tamara Rasberry. And like I said, we were so excited that we were going to be able to talk with them at WorkHuman and hang out with them at WorkHuman because they were going to be there. That was like, yay, we can talk, but we get to hang out. So next best thing here. So Ann, I'm going to let you introduce our guests before we jump in to more great conversation, because we'll probably we could go for hours and hours, I'm sure.
I'm sure that we could with these great women. I am reading introductions. I just went by alphabetical order by first name because there's no way to prioritize. Every one of them is fantastic. So let me get going. Elena Valentine is an expert in leveraging video stories in the workplace. With the motto, "You cannot be what you cannot see," Elena started filming jobs as a way to get young people excited about the world of work. Since then, her team at Skill Scout has since built a world-class media company. Their films have helped clients like Nike and American Airlines engage candidates and employees alike. She was recently named HR Superhero of the Year, how apropos, by Disrupt HR Chicago. She is also the co-founder of Mezcla Media Collective, a nonprofit that elevates women filmmakers of color. And next up for Elena and her team is the Humans at Work documentary series that shares stories of people who find passion and meaning in their work. Sarah Morgan has been a practicing HR executive for 20 years. She's currently the Chief Excellence Officer of Buzzaroonie LLC, where she provides consulting and coaching surrounding inclusive and equitable organizational culture and practical people-centric leadership. Sarah still also serves as an active HR practitioner as the Group Director of Human Resources for a national retail service organization headquartered outside Durham, North Carolina. In 2011, Sarah burst onto the social media scene under the pen name Buzzaroonie With her blog, The Buzz on HR, 9 years later, the pen name is gone, but her blog is still going strong with over 10,000 readers each month. Sarah is the creator and curator of the Black Blogs Matter and Black Pods Matter hashtag movements. She's also the creator and host of the Leading in Color podcast, a show centering on cultivating positive workplace experiences through diversity, inclusion, and social consciousness. She's amassed more than 25,000 followers across LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And Sarah has been named the best HR practitioner blogs, the top women in HR tech, and the global voices of HR lists for consecutive years. And then we have Tamara Rasberry, SHRM CP, PHR, currently serving as the HR manager, Department of One for a national nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. Her nearly 20 years in the HR field have included in-house and consulting roles for nonprofit organizations of all sizes in the DC metro area. Tamara also heads Rasberry Consulting LLC, an HR consulting firm specializing in developing strategies for inclusion, diversity, and equity with a focus on addressing mental health in the workplace. Tamara is an active member of the Society for Human Resource Management and holds the SHRM Inclusive Workplace Culture Specialty Credential. She's also a member of the National Diversity Council and is passionate about going beyond representational diversity to creating inclusive and psychologically safe workplaces that put people first while still reaching strategic goals. Tamara's thoughts on mental health and diversity and inclusion have been sought and shared by multiple mainstream media outlets, including Forbes, SHRM HR Magazine, WorkHuman, Radio, and the New York Times. Welcome, all of you.
Yes.
Fantastic
Yay.
to share with.
Yes.
All this badassery.
Yes.
Right. That's
I know.
right. We
This
are
is
surrounded. It's amazing.
This is awesome. This is so awesome. So I want to take just a minute and say, you know, the goal of our HR Wonder Woman podcast has been to share voices of historically underrepresented women and encourage leaders, and specifically HR leaders, as they face the challenges of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work. This work is not just for that leadership. It is for all leaders and all HR professionals. And I want to emphasize that because this is not work that needs to be siloed. It is across the board for everybody. The goal of DEBI isn't just one or two women or historically underrepresented women on your leadership team, but the goal is better humanity. And I am calling out Torrin Ellis because I'm sure I read that on, I think it was Twitter or on his podcast that he mentioned that. And I'm like, yes, I was probably in my car with that. So we have got an excellent conversation today. I'm so excited about this. So we're going to get into it. But first thing we always do, we always identify ourselves, because by us identifying who we are, naming our privilege, makes it a safer place for everyone to identify that way. So I will start. I am Wendy. I am white, married, straight, cisgender, Christian, and we say non-disabled, correct? Okay, I want to make sure I get that right. I want to make sure that I get that right. And as we kind of say, if you name the privilege, I probably have it. So how about you, Anne? Oh, and my pronouns. My pronouns are she and her. I always forget that one.
Yeah, my pronouns are also she, her. I am a straight, cisgender, white woman with a lot of middle-class privilege as well. And I think, you know, to Wendy's point, it's important that we name that we share our identities. Partly there's just like naming those identities makes it easier for everybody to start naming and really sharing who they are. And I also think that it's important to talk about like the lens that we see the world through, because if you don't name it, you're still seeing the world through that lens. But if you don't name it, then you can't recognize it. And I don't want to only see the world through the lens of the privilege that I carry. I want to be able to see the world much more. I want to see the real world, the whole world. And you can't do that if you don't recognize, you know, who you are. So those are my identities, especially for the purpose of the conversation that we're getting ready to have. And so we're going to jump into the first question, which is your identities. We know that intersectionality matters. It's the reason we do the podcast. And we all have many ways that we identify, and different parts of our identity matter more in some spaces than others. So when thinking about this conversation, how do you identify and what are your pronouns? Any one of you can take it away.
I'll go. So I am Sarah. This is Sarah. Are we doing this video and audio? Y'all can edit me out.
Yeah, we're doing both.
Okay.
Yeah. We were supposed to be up front on it. We were supposed to be up on a stage anyway, so
Yep.
why not?
So
Sarah said you should have said that up front.
yeah, my
Y'all look good. Y'all look
pronouns
great.
are, it's fine. My pronouns are she and her. I am a cis hetero Black woman. I am a Christian. I am very fair skinned. I have advanced education. I am over 40, though I don't look it. I have made my way to the middle class, which took a long time. I am intermittently abled. I'm a Gen X Xennial. I'm also a part of the sandwich generation, as I have kids and I have older people, my mother and my grandmother, who I help care for. I am a remarried mother of 2 with 3 bonus children. Those are all my identities.
Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I'll go next. This is Tamara. My pronouns are she, her. I am a Black, cisgender, heterosexual female. I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother. I am in my mid-40s. Single, never been married. What else am I? I'm an introvert. I am impatient. When I think about my identity, I think but like Ann said, for the purpose of this conversation, I think being a Black female are the top 2 that we probably talk about the most when we talk about workplace issues.
And this is Elena. My pronouns are she and her. And in particular for this conversation, I identify cisgender, heterosexual. I do identify as a woman of color, but recognize that I am white passing and come with economic privilege and advanced education. I'll just end there.
That's, it's amazing when you have to stop and think how you identify, thinking of all those different identities that come around with who we are and how it frames our conversation. So as we think about the current climate of organizational culture and DEIB work, where do you see the focus for 2020 organizations committed to developing and increasing their commitment to attracting, hiring, developing, and retaining diverse talent and building inclusive cultures, especially given the way that a global pandemic has affected everything, all of our plans?
I think that's an excellent question, because I really feel that the pandemic has caused a lot of organizations to kind of rethink the strategies that they were using previously, both for hiring, but also for internal employment practices, because probably most organizations weren't ready for something like this. So whether it comes down to broadening the pool of people you reach out to for hiring, or changing your hiring practices to be more open, like using video and other types of things that a lot of organizations weren't doing before, I think the pandemic has caused organizations to have to rethink how they were doing things before. And I think that it's an unfortunate reason, but I think it's a good thing, because a lot of organizations are kind of slower to move, and so they have to move.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it really has given organizations an opportunity to look at like what's working, what's not working, what do we need to change. A lot of times we put projects on the back burner because there are more pressing things. We think about doing video interviews, we think about our hiring practices, we think about all of those things, but it's not front of mind. Now, this has created an opportunity for us to slow down and to look hopefully more intentionally at all of that. The other thing I would say is this, as we start to look at, because there are a lot of people that are on furlough or who have taken salary reductions and things like that. I think as we start to bring people back to work and reopen businesses, it's a wonderful opportunity to look at pay equity issues. Like now is a wonderful, like, if we bringing people back, can we bring people back on equitable playing fields? As we start to bring people back off of furlough, can we make sure that we're reorienting them to the organization properly, and making sure that we're taking steps to get them re-engaged and reacclimated to working outside of their homes, and what
Right.
all that transition is going to take. And then the last thing I really hope that we take opportunity to is the mental health piece. This is hard. People are grieving actual losses. They are going, just the effects of being inside of your house for weeks and weeks on end without, if you're someone who lives alone, you may not necessarily have anybody else, around. That really takes a toll on your mental. And so I hope we take the opportunity to address some of that on the back end of 2020, and as we start reopening businesses and inviting people back into the workplace.
And I think I will add, the pressure's on. If companies thought that they had pressure before, the world is now watching. This is not just other HR folks watching or employees or candidates. The world is watching every Amazon move, whether that is good or bad. And we are going to take that with us as we move forward. That's the biggest thing that we're seeing even now for companies who have to furlough or lay off folks. They are having to think about it in such more of an intentional way, because they have to very quickly think about this as the circle, because that is part of the employee experience. And for many hotel chains that might be rehiring these folks back, being let go is going to be a part of their mind, and they have to do that as humanely and with as much empathy as possible. And so that's something that we're seeing, so much from there. And I think to the point, especially what Sarah was saying around, we're working from home. This is so different. We are now, again, companies are going to be pressured to, again, we talk a lot about folks bringing their whole selves to work. Well, now work has come to our homes. So our children, our dogs, our dramas, our traumas are all put in the spotlight. And companies have to show such a level of empathy and understanding that you're now coming into our house. And so this idea of bringing our whole selves to work has taken on a whole new meaning as a result of this. And I think there will be lasting effects for it as well.
For sure. I would tack on to that in the same way that employers have to think about reacclimating people to go back into the office, and how Sarah was saying how it's kind of traumatic for some people to have to be in the house all the time, like especially if they're alone. But it's also traumatic for some people to have to be in the house with the people they're in the house with. There's people who look forward to going to work as a respite, and now they're stuck in the house with somebody they don't want to be around for 8 hours a day. And it could be because of personality clash, it could be because of abuse, it could be because of anything, but those things are gonna, affect your mental health as well. So I definitely hope that going forward, employers who have made adjustments for the crisis don't stop when the crisis is over. Like, we really have to increase our level of empathy and flexibility, and all the things that they're doing now, allowing people to have flexible hours or work remotely. Those things should continue outside of a crisis, because those are things that people could still use. And to me, it's always about how can the person be their best selves and do their best work for the organization, and not necessarily where they're sitting at or what time they're sitting there. And that's with understanding that all jobs are different. So there are jobs where you can't work from home, or things like that. But I think generally when we have these type of conversations, we're talking about kind of like your predominantly office-based jobs, and how employers are going to have to adjust post-crisis.
What scares me about that, though, is that I feel like most organizational leaders are just looking to get back to what it was before and are not thinking at all with any sort of intention about what are we learning from this and how can we use this to be better, to give our people more flexibility, to give our people more work-life balance. You know, what have we learned that can move our culture forward to better align with where we as an organization want to go? I just think a lot of leaders are still fighting the change that this is inevitably going to bring about. And ultimately, I think that's going to end up harming organizations and harming our economy more than if we would just accept that we're not going back. Like, this is how things are going to be for a good while. And so we got to figure out how we operate successfully within this as the new paradigm, instead of fighting so hard to get back to what used to, whether it was effective or not. And that's kind of what scares me about it, is that I think I don't know that leaders are at the point yet where they're thinking about, you know, not doing the same thing, not just going back to the same way.
Yeah.
I will share an example, and I still don't think we know the companies, but there's been a couple of surveys that have been sent out by companies, employee surveys, where they're asking employees, what would it take to make you feel safe to come back, and getting kind of that feedback, which I thought was, you know, both kind of inclusive, and I think, you know, kind of human-centered to do.
What I have seen, being in the nonprofit sector, is I have seen leaders look at what does this mean for our member base. You know, so they're reacting to the changes that the crisis has caused for their external stakeholders, but not really focusing on the employees as much.
I think that might be true for, I'm sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Oh, no, and I was going to jump in, adding to what Elena said. I think organizations right now are afraid to ask employees the question. Like, I don't think that organizations are taking this opportunity to survey and ask their employee populations what they want and what they need and what they would like to see be different when they come back, because they're not prepared to respond. And so, and that's pretty typical, you know, when we don't want to know the answers, or we don't want to have to do the thing, then we just don't ask the question, and then we don't even have to worry about what that's going to do. But I think the best organizations and the ones that are really embracing the opportunities within this are going to be the ones that do stuff like that.
And I think the I don't say cool thing, but with social media now, we're going to hear more of those stories, and we're hearing them faster. So the people that are doing it right, it's going to be clear, because their employees, I think, will be talking about it. I heard about those the surveys too, Elena, and those people, those companies are going to be successful, and the ones that try to go back to normal, the ones that are laying people off via email or recorded Zoom call, we're going to find out who you are.
Yeah, there's no holding back now. There's no secrets. I saw someone post the other day that going forward, any interview they're in, they're going to ask, how did you treat your employees during the coronavirus?
As one of your questions, like, what happened? And I think it's a very relevant thing, because it's going to tell you a lot about the culture of the organization and how they treat their people, and do you want to work there? Yeah.
Which I think is a great segue to our next question, which is so the question is, what is leadership's and HR's role in breaking down barriers for historically underrepresented women? And I would love if we could expand on that a little bit, right? Like, what is our role in breaking down those barriers, especially today, especially given the crisis that we're in? And then, you know, to Sarah's point, what's it going to look like when we get, when the crisis ends and we have to create a new normal? What should we be doing to break down those barriers?
I think go ahead, Tamara.
Oh, go ahead.
I think the issue is that what HR has to do is the thing that we've not done consistently when it comes to underrepresented groups of people, and that is actively advocate. We still, in so many organizations, are afraid to call out the actual lack of representation of people from marginalized groups, whether that is women of color, men of color, and even within of color, you can have, you have different races and ethnicities and nationalities of people, and we're still not talking about it. So the first thing that has to happen is we have to, call that out and just be super intentional about saying, hey, where is this demographic of people? Organizations should be reflective of the communities in which they live. And so if you live in a city that's 40% brown and your office ain't 40% brown, you got a problem, a serious, serious problem. And then the other piece that I wanted to make sure that I said, because I wrote down notes, I'm trying to be responsible, is, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I pointed out is the importance of women in leadership. If you look internationally, globally, at what's going on with this pandemic, the countries that have women in charge are the ones that are doing the best at flattening their curve, at making sure people have food, proper shelter, proper medical care, proper access to, sanitary things so that they can wash their hands. They don't have no fools out in the street protesting about open up the hair cuttery and the fur ruckers. Okay, that's not happening. So that's what happens when women lead, and we can't lose sight of that. So I just want to make sure I threw that in there too.
Absolutely. Excellent point there. I say, kind of just to piggyback on that, I feel like HR's role is to provide information and guidance to the leadership in the areas that they aren't addressing. So like Sarah said, speak up on these things that we see and know are issues, but no one's talking about them. Like, we have to be the ones, because there's a lot of things that we as HR professionals know that is going on in the organization that the leadership is completely unaware of. And it could be intentional because they don't want to see it, or it could be, sorry about that. I live in the hood, y'all. It could be intentional or it could be unintentional, but a lot of times leaders, unless someone brings it to them, they're just gonna keep doing the same old thing. So like, I've had to even address with managers for interns, like, why do you keep going to these same schools to get your interns? Like, you need to reach out to other schools with other types of populations to get these interns. So, we kind of have to be, like you said, the advocate for other groups, because otherwise it'll just continue to be business as usual.
And pay your interns.
Pay your interns.
That one.
Please pay your interns. Thank you.
Like, if you can't afford to pay them, you shouldn't be trying to have them.
Thank you. Thank you. Because otherwise you just get interns who can afford to take a summer without pay, and you shut out a whole group of people who need that experience and need that paycheck.
The experience and the money, exactly.
Facts. Amen.
What was that, Elena?
That's the experts took the floor. I give them the space to move on to the next question.
Oh, that was just, yeah. I've been reading about some of the women leaders, New Zealand's Prime Minister. I'm girl crush, total girl crush, because she's knocking it out of the ballpark. And man, would love to be living in a country under a woman like that.
It's amazing what competence can do.
Okay. Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And, are we ready for a woman leader? Oh my God.
Yes. Yes. Yes, we are.
We
I
are.
am.
I like
Look where we are under
We've been
men.
ready.
We are.
We've been ready.
Yeah,
The
definitely.
rest of the world is leaving us in the dust. We've been ready.
Mhm.
We've
Right?
been ready.
Mhm.
Amen. Amen. So, we really didn't, when we first planned this, like, obviously we're in a completely different place. You know, but I love that we can still share those stories and share that information and the back and forth, which is fantastic. And I was trying to find it again. Somebody put it out on Twitter where, we're not all in the same boat. We're all in the same river.
Mm-hmm.
We're all in that same river, but we all have different resources. Some of us are in really nice boats. Some of us are in smaller boats, and some people are just hanging on to a rock or a log for dear life. So knowing that that's going on out there, and we have some people working from home. We have some people who still have to go to Walmart to work, to McDonald's to work, and we need them to do that because we all still need to eat. So how can leaders and HR pros respond and support all of our people coming from all these different places, to make sure that we come out on the other side healthy and hopefully better when we're done?
Yeah.
I think for our people who still have to go to work, and those are people in all different sectors. I know people who work in office jobs and their offices are like, no, y'all still got to come in, but they're doing it in like shifts or something like that. So it's not
Seen
as
that.
many people. It's key for the employers to provide those people with all of the resources they need to be safe while they're going to work. So like, for example, my daughter works in a homeless shelter. So she's deemed essential because they have to keep the shelters open. And they didn't start giving them gloves and masks and stuff until there was a lot of backlash for employers who are not giving their employees these things. So that's one of the key things. Is like, if you need us to come into work, you need to protect our health, just the same as if there wasn't a pandemic, but there's a spill on the floor and you have to mop it up and put the little sign over it to protect people from falling. You have to protect people to the best of your ability from getting this virus. So to me, it's really important for employers to understand that the people who work for them are not just, replaceable cogs that, if you don't work out, if you get sick, we'll hire somebody else. If you die, somebody else. Like, you really need to focus on the physical and mental health of the people who are working for you, people who you may have had to lay off, people who will be your future employees. Because like you said before, people are looking at all of these employers. I might not work for you now, but I'm looking at what you're doing. And if I thought I might wanted to work for you, how you're acting right now is really gonna have a say-so in that. So I think protecting your employees who are still having to go to work, whether it's the grocery store, whether it's the bus drivers, whatever it is, that's key for all employers. There's no excuse to me for, to me, if you don't have the personal protection equipment, then you shouldn't be calling people into work. Like, it should not fall on the employee to have to bring their own masks and gloves and stuff. Like, it's, you have to be a responsible employer.
It's definitely a reevaluation of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs in every part of this candidate and employee experience, right? It's really getting back to the basics to, like, do we have the safety protection? Are we physically, doing everything we can to keep our employees out of harm's way? And once you can get that base, you can go up. But we're having to do that for everything, right? And what's so unfortunate are things like providing employees the protective equipment that they need should just be table stakes, right? Like this shouldn't even be a conversation. But what I find, in pieces where I know employers paid little attention to the safety and well-being, certainly has been in kind of the layoff and furlough situations. I'm actually seeing a lot of companies step up to be as supportive and understanding and humane as possible. So, for example, I think it was like Hilton, for example, who, has had to let go of a lot of people, but worked really hard to get up kind of a resource site, making sure, okay, this is where we know it is hiring, this is where you can get access to other resources, et cetera, et cetera. And so they are trying to connect the dots for those employees, I think within the same spirit of, we know we've had to make this decision, but how can we make sure we're at least, getting you, at least to some sort of stability. So that has been encouraging to see for some companies, who are certainly taking that. And then I think to the point of mental health and well-being, for those of us who are at home, or, have colleagues who are on the front lines, I think what I've seen really beautiful in that is ways in which we are honoring, we are showing gratitude, we are acknowledging, we are shining light on those workers and employees, because they're doing it absolutely, yes, it's for a paycheck. They very much rely on this, but for them to feel honored, and for them to see that we are, helping them find meaning in their work, I have found to also be, I think, very encouraging when I've seen, employee groups really step up to support, elevate, and hype up the folks on the front lines right now.
I love all
But just
of
to
that.
jump back really quickly, because your original question, I think, was like, what's the responsibility of the HR and the leadership? And I just wanted to point out that, unfortunately, HR and leadership aren't always together in the movements that they want to bring forth. And it made me think of it when Elena was talking about furloughs and layoffs, because I know people who work in HR who very much would have liked to have done that for their employees differently than the leadership. The leadership is like, look, we got 300 people lay off, send them a note and keep it moving. And I have had peers like crying and being emotional, like I wouldn't have wanted to do it like that, but at some point, one thing that I don't know if people don't understand it, don't realize it, or they don't want to, HR isn't the most powerful entity in the organization,
Yeah.
So at some point, it doesn't always come down to us, but we definitely want to make sure that in the areas that it does, we're doing everything that we can to make the experience, from start to finish and back again, positive.
And the last
Yeah,
thing
I think, go ahead. Oh, ha! I just think, control your controllables is the thing that it always comes back to for me. To Tamara's point, like we in HR, we don't always have the ability to, make the final decision and do things necessarily the way that we want to. But there are things that are within our control of how we handle things. We fortunately, I was fortunate to survive the furloughs at my organization, and I was able to have a lot of voice in terms of how we handled those sorts of things, and in the letters that we sent to the employees and stuff like that. And there were some things that they were like, oh, do we really need to put that in there? Oh yeah, we really do, and this is and then it's my name on it, so this is what's going in there. So when you have those opportunities to take control and to take the reins and take the lead in a place where you may, not normally have voice and be able to have that kind of impact, then just make sure you seize those kinds of moments. Another area that I've seen, and I know people who have been furloughed and layoffs are, complaining about, is with the unemployment claims. A lot of the sites have become very difficult to get into. And then, the responsive, like they're depending on their employer to respond. So regardless of whether if you're working from home, whatever, like you got to make sure that you make time to check the websites and make sure you go to your office, get your mail, just make sure that you are responding to that, because people are dependent on those benefits. So don't be a further hindrance to that, by not responding timely because of your own stuff.
Agreed.
The last thing I've just seen done really well, I mean, it's transparency and vulnerability. I think that there is a rise, and I hope one that continues, of the beauty of a vulnerable leader. When you have a leader who can step up and say, yeah, I know things are really shitty right now, and what I'm going to have to do right now is horrible. And there's just a level of emotion and connection and relatability that employees are seeking. And, you know, I know that folks can say what they will about Marriott, because there's been some good and some negative things. But one of the first things that, you know, their CEO did at the beginning was, hey, you know what? I want to send a very informal, vulnerable video message to 100,000 of my colleagues. And his executive around him didn't think that that was a good idea. This is a man who just come out of chemo. He doesn't look really good. And he said, I don't care. He said, my employees need to see me in my face. They need to see that I am in here with them. And so I'm going to move forward. And, you know, coming from, you know, my best friend, basically her entire family works at Marriott out in Chicago. And you know, they had been furloughed. But when, you know, my friend asked them, hey, you know, what do you think about, you know, your CEO? They're like, yeah, isn't he great? I mean, really, I mean, people connect. And even despite that there is, you know, a lot of, you know, things that are happening, we, I think, can both show empathy and understanding to leaders who are equally showing us that level of empathy and understanding ourselves. And we're seeing that happen. And I get really excited to see that there are leaders who are doing that.
Yeah, I think that makes a difference too. I think people will are going to be much more forgiving to those organizations, even if they have some missteps, if they have that vulnerability. I remember seeing that video, and it was just like, yeah, that's more leaders need to do that. We need to get out of this idea that our leaders need to have all of the answers all of the time.
They need to get out of that idea, because I think that keeps them from communicating.
Yes.
Because they're like, I don't know, so I just won't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
Say anything. And then you have your whole company like, well, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And I think, you know, leaders need to understand that they are people too. Like,
yeah,
the more humane and human that you behave and act to your staff, the more they will see you that way.
Yeah.
It's when you try to put yourself up on a pedestal is when people don't care, you know, don't see you as a person. They see you as, oh, that's that person up there. So, you know, you see it all the time where there's people who's like, if something bad happens to a celebrity and they're like, I don't care, they're a celebrity, because they put them, you know, up here, where it's like, they're a human being as well, but because they see them in a different light, they don't have the same level of empathy. I think it's super important for leaders in the organizations that we work in to not try to put themselves on a pedestal in front of their teams and really say, you know, I'm here with you. I'm here to help you. It's like, you know, I might make a lot more money than you, but you know, just not put themselves at a different level so they're not relatable. Because when you're not relatable, people tune you out.
And I think that goes back to, we were talking earlier about how that's going to be an interview question in the future, right? What did your company do during the coronavirus crisis? And the answer isn't about like, oh, we didn't have to lay anybody off. Like, companies can be forgiven for having to furlough people. We understand that that's business, but how you did it, how you treated your employees, how leadership showed that empathy and that vulnerability, that's what people are looking for, right? Like, did you share a really vulnerable video with everyone and really talk about, you know, and then back that up with some action to try and take the best care you could? That's what people are looking for. I mean, sure, people are looking for like, could I keep my job? But we understand that may not be possible, but there's the way to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's the same whether you're laying off one person or 1,000 people.
Yep. Yep, for sure. For sure. I could listen to you all talk all night. Yeah, maybe we should just keep going. I wish we could. I really wish we could. But I'm gonna move us on to the next question. So networking is core to HR Wonder Woman, right? So we're going to kind of pivot to a networking question. So who is someone from an underrepresented group that you've started following in the past year that we all need to know about?
Such a tough question.
It is. There's so many good people. I made a list, so
That's good.
I'll do
Say all
whatever.
of them, and then I'll take one.
It'll
of
trigger, yeah, it'll trigger everybody else's stuff. So one, some of them are from Instagram, some of them are Twitter and Instagram. The Liberate app is one. I also downloaded that. It's a meditation app for people of color, by people of color, but it's a lot of great free meditation content. It has been really helpful for me dealing with anxiety and insomnia and all of that as I've been going through this. So and they do inspirational posts and things on Instagram as well. So I love them. Fearless and Formidable on Instagram. She is actually a consultant that works with Black women about advancing their careers and finding their voice in the corporate world. But she also does daily like inspirational and informational quotes, posts, and it's hilarious. She's very engaging with her audience, and I just love that account to death. Dr. Uche Blackstock is another one that I follow on Instagram and Twitter. She had pivoted out of practicing medicine in order to do more consulting on health disparities, but because of COVID, she is now back to practicing, and she's been posting a lot about what she's seeing in New York on the front lines of dealing with all of that. So that's been really interesting. Kezia Williams, Kezia, she runs a company called The Black Upstart, which helps entrepreneurs get themselves, up and running. But during this time, she's been focusing most of her content on teaching people how to budget and save and even invest when coins are a little bit lower. And so I've really been, she does an Instagram live, I think on Sundays, that talks specifically, and she takes questions out of the comment section. So, and she's just really high energy, just a super dope woman. So that's another one. And then the last one is Steakums. Was on my list. Listen, Steakums has been representing.
They've been on it, yeah.
I went out and bought a pack of Steakums just on general purposes. So I was like, they have really been doing well on the Twitters. So I really enjoyed following them, and that's my list.
That's funny. I did download Liberate after you mentioned it on Facebook, Sarah.
I love it. I love the Liberate app. It's so good.
Uh-oh, y'all. I got a little co-host. Come on, co-host. Where's my co-host? Go say hi. Say hi to the people.
Hi.
You just woke up. Say hi to the people.
Oh, no.
It's my co-host. Good? Okay. It's funny because when I saw the question that Wendy had sent, I was gonna say Dr. Blackstock as well, but then I thought maybe they wanted us to say people who weren't known that much, and I couldn't really think of anyone. else. So yeah, those are all good ones that Sarah gave.
Authors: Elizabeth Acevedo, amazing. Fire on High. She's got a new book coming out as well. She was the writer of Poet X, incredible. And Gabby Rivera, who's Puerto Rican, grew up in the Bronx, wrote recently, got a lot of acclaim from her book Juliet Takes a Breath, which I think was a beautiful coming of age story of a Puerto Rican lesbian out of the Bronx, trying to find herself in Portland, Oregon. So I'm getting really inspired by those authors. Another one, Alice Wong, who is just wrote a book called Disability Visibility, which is talking about disability and inclusion, et cetera. And so she's a new voice that I've recently found, and I'm paying attention to when it comes to disability and inclusion and those trends.
So can y'all email those to me?
Yeah, put them in the show notes.
Yes,
for
they will be in
everybody.
the
Yeah.
show
I'll be in the
notes
show
for
notes.
sure. But I probably will say, hey, just make sure I'm spelling these right so we can find them. But that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Lots of great folks to follow. Really excited. So thank you guys for sharing them. Always love finding new women to follow. So, to kind of wrap up, one of the things that Ann and I have recently started is, we talk about a lot of heavy stuff on this show, and sometimes we can walk away feeling a little down. So our final question is, what brings you guys hope? I think we need this now more than ever, quite honestly, this
Yeah.
question, but what brings y'all hope?
I think for me, it's been watching people like still be creative in this time. Shout out to Elena because she's here, but her quarantine and create challenge has been just super fun to watch. I'm finally getting back into the space where I'm feeling ready to create and engage after the first few weeks of just really struggling, with feeling a sense of balance and normalcy in the midst of all of this. And so just being able to watch that content and go, hey, I'm gonna get there, I'm gonna get there, has been really great. And then I also think in general, watching how supportive people have been to one another during this has been really hopeful. Just watching people, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook or, text messages or whatever, like people are being intentional about reaching out, making sure that folks are okay and feeling supportive. And I think that has been great. And it makes me, hopeful, and certainly things that I hope continue as well.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I would say hopeful that it won't always take a global crisis for people to be good to each other. Because I agree with Sarah that, you've seen a lot of kind of coming together and reaching out and banding together and understanding that, this virus doesn't discriminate and all of that type of stuff. But when people aren't getting sick and people are back to their kind of regular lives, I'm hopeful that these type of sentiments will continue. And also, as we talked about before, that people will, just continue the conversation about mental health awareness and the impact that it has on people and the way that employers can help with that.
I'm going to share a quote that inspires me from Toni Morrison. And what she writes is, particularly in moments of dread and uncertainty, this is precisely the time when artists go to work. There's no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do our art, we do language, and that is how civilizations heal. So what gives me hope, what gets me excited, what gets me creative is seeing how artists are really leaning in to their pure communication form to put out something beautiful that gives us forced moments of pause, reflection, and devotions.
TikTok alone is blowing up. I mean, people are super freaking creative on TikTok. It's like, y'all really need to take that somewhere and get some coins.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, I love that. I love that quote. I love Toni Morrison too. Just, it's awesome. Yay. So you guys, this was just, so fantastic. So we will definitely do it again in 2021 at WorkHuman in person, because this is, there's gonna be lots more for us to talk about, which is fantastic. So I'd find it really hard that if people are listening to this, that they aren't already following you guys, but just in case, they aren't.
Who are these people?
Who are these people? How did you find us anyway? But just if you guys want to share one way that people can get in touch with you following this, we'll do alphabetical again. So Elena, if you want to start.
It's going to be in the show notes.
It
You
will
can
be.
find me, Valentine, just like the day. Look forward to connecting.
I love it.
Awesome. Sarah.
I'm the buzz on HR everywhere. So just Google that and you'll find me.
Awesome. And finally, Tamara.
And probably the easiest place to find me is on Twitter, which is, my handle is @TM Raspberry, not like the fruit, there's no P in it. And then you can link to me everywhere else from there. Also, funny thing, I just noticed that Elena's first name is in her last name.
It is.
Tamara, the things that
Kind
you
of things I think about.
Listen, y'all better come, Tamara, with the beautiful mind coming through at the end of the
That's
show. You better go
awesome.
ahead.
Oh my gosh. Oh. And how about you? Best way for people to find you?
Best way to find me is also on Twitter. It's @AnnTomk, ANNETOMK. I'm there as much as I'm anywhere.
Same for me. This is Twitter is where I found all 4 of these wonderful women. So Twitter is where I will stay. It is my drug of choice. I'm going to continue to quote, I believe that was Minda Harts. I can continue to quote her on that. Twitter is my drug of choice. I am Wendell93. Shout out to Kate Bischoff and Thrive HR for allowing us to use her Zoom account to get this recording. Thank you, Kate. Appreciate that. And as always, I have to share, please join the HR Social Hour hashtag on Twitter. We do a scheduled chat the 2nd and 4th Sundays of each month, but lately we're doing a lot more. We're doing some movie shows, we're doing some trivia. There's all sorts of fun stuff coming out. So keep an eye on that hashtag as well. So Elena, Sarah, Tamara, Anne, thank you so much. I loved this conversation. This was fantastic. Thanks to everyone who listened. And now it's your turn to go tell your story.
Thank you.